This week on RSBANDB Update, the Lore Diggers reunite to pull back the layers of Sentistan. We go from utopia to the excess of empire with empty children, theatrical reviews, and the secrets of the Inquisition. This all leads to ask, where are they now, and what is Voss? This is RSBANDB Update, episode 847, recorded Sunday, September 5th, 2021. The Mask of Sintistan. Hello, everybody, and thank you for joining us for another episode of RSBANDB Update. The time has come to dive deep into Sentistan and talk about the lore of that wonderful dig site. And with that, of course, the Lore Diggers are back. Tanis, hello.
Hello, thank you, Shane.
Sirion.
Good to be back.
It's been a while, but yes.
Yes, last one was Orthan, the Vibing Orthan Encore, I believe that was called.
Yes.
And stepping in for Diana is Questcaping. Welcome back. Or I guess
Hello,
welcome to the
my
Lore
first-
Diggers, but welcome back to the podcast.
Yeah, hey. Yes, looking forward to my first Lore Diggers. I'm really digging it.
I'm wondering how many dig puns you and Sirion are going to put into this here.
As
How many
many
are
as we
gonna dig
can.
Oh, Tanis, please don't tell me you're joining it. You're joining them.
I mean, I'm pretty sure that the job application for Lore Diggers makes great digging-related puns.
Yeah, of course. And
I mean, we're really going deep here.
With that, if you guys want to dig even deeper into this episode, check out the show notes at update.rsbnb.com. Yes, I did do that myself. Full show notes are available of that. And if you like what you hear here, come check us out in Discord at rsbnb.com/Discord. We're all in there. We all have a fun chat from time to time, but it's time to go back to Sentistan. Do you guys remember when you first heard of Sentistan in game?
A good long while ago.
Yeah, and I've always been confused since that point, because I always thought it was in the wilderness. But
Yeah,
That's
that was part of the Empire, the Zerosian Empire. And Sentistan itself was the capital city of that. And people might wonder where Sentistan was in the good old days of the Zerosian Empire, but it was east of Iraq and west of what we now currently call the Mortmire Swamp. And as we've heard many times before in RuneFest talks and whatnot, Sentistan was viewed as the jewel in the crown of the Zerosian Empire. And not only was it the capital city, it was a hub for culture and organization for those who were loyal to Zaros himself. And we're going to talk about that because some of the mysteries actually dive directly into that idea behind culture and how they carried themselves out in the Second Age before it all came crumbling down with the Third Age God Wars. And with that, we go fast forward to the Fifth Age when we first got a glimpse that there might be something there in the dig site quest, but Sentistan itself wasn't actually alluded to until Desert Treasure when we got the ancient magic teleport to the Sentistan dig site. It was just listed as Sentistan. And ever since Desert Treasure, I don't know about you guys, but Desert Treasure was one of my favorite old school quests. It was dig site even before that got me on the Zaros bandwagon. I've kind of since jumped off of it because it's become a little bit too mainstream for me. But nonetheless,
Oh, that's why you jumped off, not because
Zaros
Zaros is
hipster?
because he is an incredible douche.
exactly. And over time, we gained more info. We also had the Temple of Sentistan, which brought a whole lot more info to the forefront on what might have happened there. And that was, of course, the quest where we help Azanadra, who was known as Dr. Nabanek, for parts of that quest, restoring the temple there. It unlocks ancient curses for us, but it restores Azanadra's communication with Zaros. That was another big moment, and pretty much everything else after that stayed relatively quietly until the Sixth Age. We had the Empty Throne Room event. You guys remember that in the pre-run up to Children of Ma?
Mm-hmm.
And even then, those people down there in the Empty Throne Room are still paddling their bikes. I always
That's
thought
good
that,
XP.
yeah, I always thought that maybe there might be some reason to go back there, but of course that turned out to be a dark Anamika spot, as well as archaeology material hotspot as well. Once those ones came out.
Do you remember how excited we were, Shane, when to get our first glimpse, just our first little glimpse of what Sentistan looked like or might have been like back in the day?
Yeah, the throne room, big deal of that, and obviously that was part of the city. And one thing I've always wondered, now that we have access to Sentistan itself, would we ever, get some sort of connection up to the empty throne room and into what we have in Sentistan with the main hall and whatnot? I don't know if anything like that would ever happen, since they're, both equally underground. And I feel like we talked about this on the Caradet Lore Diggers episode, but we need to just be 100% clear with this, that at this point, Caradet is not part of the city of Sentistan, I believe, right?
Yeah, I don't
think so. It's its own Zerosian temple else out
Different
where in
continent.
the desert. Yeah. But in any case, through the 6th Age, things picked up, and we know where we're at right now. The Elder God Wars, of course, popped off with Azanadra's quest, and later that Battle of the Monolith, which was our kick to go into the city of Sentistan with site manager Jimmy. And for some reason, thank you for correcting this quest keeping. For some reason, throughout this entire doc, I kept calling him Johnny.
Yes, you did.
Here's Johnny.
Maybe that one rolls off the tongue better. I don't know, but it is definitely Jimmy. And the interesting part about this dig site, of course, was that it was said to be a mini dig site because it only spans level 60 to 67. But when we actually talked about it on the show, it feels nothing like that, did it?
Not at all, no.
And-
It's not any new bespoke environments or whatever as we had with all the other dig sites, but it's still very much its own story and mystery and something you can really dig into.
I see what you did there. And, when this update came out, it was perfect. I sunk an entire week into it, uncovering everything from start to finish, and that's why we're here. If you've never joined us for one of these Lore Diggers episodes, we're going to effectively summarize everything that we've learned and maybe ask some important questions about the mysteries and research that came up at Sentistan. So without further ado, I'll just say spoiler warning ahead, because most of what we've talked about has been in the recent past, but this stuff might be not have been excavated yet for you if you haven't done that yet. And if you don't want that, come back later. But we're going to start with some researches. And did you guys feel that the researches were structured in a bit of an interesting way in this dig site, in that they were intertwined, a good number of them, I think 2 of them at least, with the mysteries?
Mm-hmm.
Which I think...
Yeah.
They did something like that in Warforged as well, which
Yeah.
I really liked, because otherwise the research felt very sort of, I don't know, a Chronos.
Two, I thought you were going to say 2-dimensional. But,
Yeah, that too.
yeah. So the first one is...
a couple.
Go ahead, Questscape.
Yeah, there's a couple here that are standalone, but a lot of them are just very much their own step in the mysteries.
Yeah. So the first one is the Hidden Chamber. It's through a bookcase in the Cathedral, and the field study says that there's a hidden part of the Cathedral connected to the statues and the Shadow Realm. If we can uncover the secret, imagine what we could discover. And the report, after you complete it, says, we uncovered what appears to be a secret laboratory dedicated to studying the monolith. What was Zaros doing here? And this is the first research that you'll probably find when you come into the Cathedral. But as we'll see as we progress through this episode, we learn about this in what's effectively the last mystery for this dig site. So everybody doing this is the way I see it, is kind of whetting the appetite a bit, so to speak.
I mean, I must have spent like a solid 5 to 10 minutes after that just trying to see what was clickable, because it felt really strange to me. Oh, we uncovered a secret laboratory. Okay, Now
but there's
let me
nothing
go and see
clickable
what's there.
yet.
And there's nothing there. Like, it felt so weird that you uncover it and you don't even see the entrance, right? Like that, and that is sort of my.
Well, it was kind of hidden in
criticism.
plain sight when you think about it.
Yeah, but like the whole point with this, and that's my main criticism with this dig site, is that it wasn't clear what the progression of the researchers and the mysteries was.
Yeah,
like,
it was very much a web.
Exactly. Like, I really liked how it all felt a bit more integrated and intertwined, but at the same time, the logbook did not give enough guidance in what is the next step. Like, I think for one of the mysteries, you get, there's 2 different pages in the same spot, but it's like page 1 and page 8, and you can't get page 8 until you get like 5 and 6. So I must have spent like an hour, like, oh, I'm really unlucky with this page drop, until somebody told me, oh no, you can't get it until later in the mystery.
And
I've seen so many cases of that. Even I was in the voice chat, Modern Raven, he was in the voice chat on the RuneScape Discord on release day, and just having to reassure people that no, just get the other ones first. It'll work out.
yeah,
As opposed to any other mystery.
I didn't have that problem because I went sequentially.
Yeah, I didn't, because like pages don't drop sequentially necessarily. So
other ones,
I had like a whole list of these are the pages I need per slot, so I can like just work my way, level up to all the different excavation sites and figure it out. Well, that plan didn't work out, but there was no hint telling me I couldn't. So I like it. It felt a bit more like organic in a way, in that the story is not told necessarily as you increase in levels, but like a quest log or something like that would have been helpful, basically. Just slightly nudging you in the right direction.
Talk to Jimmy every step.
Or that, but that feels very backtracky and unnatural. But you're right. He does give hints at every stage in the mystery where to go next. It's just so different from the other dig sites.
Yeah. Yeah.
As far as the bookcase goes, it would probably have worked better if you weren't actually able to inspect it until you'd uncovered the previous story.
Yes, or once you do inspect it and research it, the outcome could be, we know there's something there, but we don't know how to get in there. Like, more explicit, right?
And
like
that's
right now,
how you get onto...
Exactly. Like, the wording right now sort of implies, oh, we've uncovered it. That means I can get in, right? And then you come there and it's sort of disappointing that you can't.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I would sort of more expect... Like, that's sort of the same as the Bandor's throne, right? In Warforged. You know there's something behind there, you just don't know how to get there yet.
And it's a big achievement when you do.
Yeah, exactly. So I think this research is great, because it makes the whole story come full circle at the end of it. It's just that it doesn't set that expectation that you're going to come back to it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think it could have done a better job at establishing itself as the central mystery of this dig site.
Yeah, so a bit of a mishmash, as things are, of pages must be in order, but the mysteries, you can discover them out of order.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, all right, fair enough. The next research is prime real estate, which you find outside the Colosseum Gateway by studying a market stall. And the question behind this one is that the markets of Sentistan are a mystery to us. Was their trade system as carefully organized as their political structure? And the report coming back from this is that the markets of Sentistan were carefully licensed with various tiers of status that granted access to more lucrative contracts and desirable tax breaks.
Honestly, this is the kind of content I come for.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, this is where archaeology shines. Archaeology is... I mean, like we just talked about it, and Warforged as well. It can work for somewhat linear content, but that's not where archaeology shines. It shines in embellishing these dig sites with an extra bit of depth and an extra bit of information. And this is also, when I wrote my Informer article about it, why I was so excited about this dig site, because all of a sudden there is another dimension of this location that we can discover. We can not just look at the assets that they use and all that stuff, because environment work is expensive, right? So storytelling to graphics is expensive, but it tells its own story, and it just makes the world feel a bit more lived in.
The power of flavor text.
Exactly, and it makes Sentistan not just, a vague city in the past. It makes it get character, and it feels like there's enough content there to write a proper history book about it, rather than it's a vague, generic fantasy city in the past.
Yeah, and I think that's what a lot of people were looking at and wanted when it came down to the Sentistan coming out, is that, maybe we can actually get some of this lore stuff resolved that we've been kind of skirting around the periphery for since Zaros came back onto the scene, because there's always been this question of what is Sentistan, and archaeology, as you mentioned, is just the perfect vehicle for that. And when you were talking about that, it just really reinforces how archaeology is effectively the lore skill, thinking about it.
Yeah, and the nice thing is that because it is not telling a complicated linear story, it can just sit on its own.
Yep.
You can uncover this if you haven't done no quest at all. You can done this after you have the master quest cape and all of that. It will still work because it stands on its own.
Yeah.
So in many ways, I think, this is the kind of content I come for.
And like I said, if I could have a mini dig site like Sentistan, say gnomes or elves or anywhere, once a month or even once every other month, I'd be 100% on board with that.
Yeah, absolutely. It shouldn't be a replacement for give me the next gnome quest already. Gosh darn it.
Perfect way to flesh things out, though, especially when
it is a great way. Yeah, exactly. And especially, I think, that my first response to the Sentistan dig site was more Azaras content, and I still feel that, right? Like, there's just a lot of it, and I kind of hope that instead of using it on whatever is in the spotlight at the moment, even though I get why they do it, it works for hype. I would love them to apply this on sort of underused parts of the game. Like if they do an area rework of Ardoin, for example, right?
Or old Ardoin.
Well, just a graphical rework of Ardoin. Link it together with like a micro dig site, just fleshing out a few details.
Nice little excuse. You get the graphical rework accompanied by content, and is the perfect kind of content to do.
Yeah, and I think that's the way they want to go going forward on that.
And archaeology has always had this nice, like what Theron is talking about. It's not necessarily linear, but it reminds me almost of like, have you guys ever used paper mache?
Yeah.
How every piece it has a shape, but you can still add to it, and you can sculpt it, and it just can go in any direction at any time. Just layer upon layer, everywhere you go.
Yeah. Got that foundation. Now work with it.
That's exactly what it is. But the next one is.
So.
Go ahead.
I do feel this is the kind of content you could cover in a quest, but it would be in a fundamentally different way. I'm thinking back on another Sentistan note. City of Sentistan had the blood bank puzzle, and through the medium of that puzzle, you're also finding about but like how the vampire's blood rationing works, and who's there stealing little bits. But that's its own little set piece in the quest, whereas something like this, you can just drop it in there, bit of scenery that you've looked over 1,000 times, and suddenly it has depth, it has history.
Yep. And that's exactly what it does well. The next research is related to the empty children mystery, and this is what we were talking about, it being a web put together. This one's at level 63. It's called Complete the Pattern, Solve the Puzzle. And there's a table east of the house where Nerissa is located on the southern tip of the western front. And it says, this ancient puzzle box is surprisingly well preserved. It sounds as if there's something inside of it. And the report with this says it took some time to unlock the secrets of the puzzle box, and that is, researchers smashed it against a rock in a bit of frustration. Inside, there was a well-preserved letter, and this is a letter that progresses empty children. So we'll come back to this when we are talking about empty children. I just wanted to mention the research in descending order.
I have to admit, this research made me chuckle.
Yeah.
It was fantastic.
Because we've all wanted to do that, right?
Yeah.
There's a moment in one of the Void Knight quests, I think it's a Void Dance, where there's this puzzle box you buy from a vendor, and you figure out elaborate ways to break it open until Cressy just smashes it with the butt of her sword.
Yeah, that works.
What a moment.
That works. Then, a fun research. Are you not entertained? Level 66. This is with Glacier Bones in the Colosseum. And the field study behind this is that the Colosseum was once a central entertainment hub of the Empire. And you ask, what games did they play here? And you know, I'm very much up for these gladiatorial kind of games. And the report on this was that the Colosseum was home to some brutal gladiatorial battles and magnificent demon-drawn chariot races. It would have been a crowded building in its heyday, which we'll learn more about exactly what went on there in the critics... what was it called? Critics...
Night Theater?
Night Theater one. I don't know why I thought it was Critics Rush or something like that. I don't know what that would be. But in any case, with that being said, after Are You Not Entertained, I want to move on to Empty Children, because the last research is a bit involved, and it's needed to talk about some of the subsequent mysteries, so we'll cross that bridge in just a little bit. You see what I did there?
Hey.
Hey.
All right.
And you give us a hard time, but
I mean,
we're all just as bad as each other.
Yeah, Sirion's the worst though. But anyways,
yeah, true.
Whoa!
Yeah, the puns. you could keep going for hours.
Oh yeah, that's true.
Empty Children. This one unlocks with level 63 archaeology, but requires 66 to ultimately complete it in terms of the pages that you're going to get from it. Pages on this one are unlocked from marketplace debris, gladiatorial or gladiators' remains, and solving the mystery. So, this mystery is just downright terrifying, I have to say. Reading through some of the stuff that you find in this one, you have to wonder what the hell was going on in Sentistan with this, because it starts talking about something called empty children in terms of being able to hear things howling, screaming, and dragging their spectral chains across the street at night. And people are downright terrified to go outside in what is seen as the crown jewel of the Zerosian Empire. And despite it has that label around it, there were still things outside that made it less than paradise for ordinary residents in Sentistan. And it really, I think, with that, showcases how on the outside the Zerosian Empire is this thing that's built up, and it's this pride and symbol of joy, but on the inside there's some pretty brutal things going on, and this is the first indication of that, and we'll talk more about that as we progress through later mysteries.
The murky depths, eh?
Yeah, what did you guys find on this? Let's start with you from Questscaping.
So did you chat to intern Jimmy after the end of this?
Yes, I did.
Yeah, so it's he was assuming that they're werewolves.
That was my
werewolf
assumption
children.
as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's like you see little claws, and the tone of all the letters, very it's very boisterous little kid, isn't it? While they're also talking about murdering someone. So that's quite some dissonance. And he's also bringing up the notion of citizenship in the Zoroastrian Empire, which, of course, was a very, very relevant concept in the Greek and Roman empires. And, of course, this is based off the Roman Empire. But you had citizens in Sentistan, and you had the non-citizens that aren't quite as protected.
And the Empire would have extended out to the Silva area where Mauritania and whatnot is right now, right?
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. There was Canifis used to be Carol, one of the Zoroastrian cities.
Yeah.
So,
and with that, the werewolf aspect of it makes sense. And that's what Jimmy infers. And, you know, I think the question I had from this is that just exactly who are the empty children? Do we feel comfortable saying that they are the werewolves, or is there something more to this?
From what I'm seeing, Jimmy seems to be pretty certain, but there's nothing in the notes themselves that actively confirms it. Though it does say claw marks, wolf hair, light footprints.
Yeah, and they even managed to tear up a wire.
It's quite some teamwork.
Yeah, and you know, we have experience with that, so that's saying something in itself if they're able to tear up a wire. So.
Oh, yeah. Bunch of werewolf children during the Lord of Empyrean boss fight.
And
what I really like about this mystery is that it's starting to show these first cracks of, you know, maybe this isn't such a utopia.
Yeah.
Like, we get all this talk about the grandeur and everlastingness of Sentistan, and then this is starting to give us hints that, oh, actually, it wasn't so great, at least not for everyone.
Mm-hmm.
What
of
Jimmy
course,
says.
I mean, always, like, most civilizations have the less fortunate, but I think this is a really great way to sort of break that mask of Sentistan.
Yeah, and
bit of a way to cut through the Shining Empire propaganda, hey?
Yeah,
exactly.
And you know, the same thing goes for any modern empire that you could look at that would have brought itself up and told itself it was like this, but then when you look back at it from a historical perspective, you see things that are entirely different with that as well. And it's nice to see that brought into game, because there's been so many examples in our history where this comes into play. So that's
what in turn Jimmy says is it highlights that the Zoroastrian Empire was only really great for its citizens.
Exactly. And it also raises that question, is that if somebody wants their empire to be great, do they want it to be great for people who are citizens of it, or do they just not care about everybody else? And that's that interesting discussion yet again that's always cropping up. And I go back to other dig sites like Everlight, who had a Greek-Roman influence on it. Does anything
just Roman, right? Isn't the Zamarakian Greek?
So the Everlight and the ancient Saradominist Empire and the Icene in particular are meant to be Greek influenced, whereas the Zoroastrian Empire is generally more Roman.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. So
and
don't equate them. You hurt my classical education.
Yep. Exactly.
Bad classicist noises.
I thought we were going. I knew we were going Greek on Everlight, and definitely Zoroastrian Roman, and we're just seeing more of that here as well, as with the gladiator fights as well, and the whole idea of the empire being great for its citizens. So this is just carrying all this stuff on from within the Zoroastrian section of the Archaeology Journal, which is where everything for Sentistan is actually located. People were wondering when this would come out, would it get its own section? No, it's Zoroastrian, so it goes in the Zoroastrian section, which makes sense when you think about it. But anything else on empty children? Because I'm willing to accept the idea that the empty children were werewolves, but I think it could have been something else. I don't know what, though.
Well, for what it's worth, the mystery pages themselves do sort of clear up some of the terror of it. For example, then you should take Ebony and Scampy with you and make some spooky noises. You know what scares those merchant types. Scraping metal, use a saucepan, chittering, get Scamp to do his ferret impression, he's rubbish but it's weird sounding, and the standard screaming. Oh, and the best part, I can't let us go without mentioning this. So they're talking about putting bloody clothes on the floor.
Yep.
We don't want old Mrs. Potterington washing them for us again. Note to self, ask Granny if she's got any more pig's blood spare.
She was around back then. I forgot to mention that from this part of Empty Children.
Yeah, truly prehistoric.
It might also have something to do with the fact that Maud Raven wrote these mysteries.
Yeah.
Maybe he was looking for another reason to do some voice acting.
I like to think that Granny Potterington, if she wanted to, could give you an entire history of Gillinor from the first age to the present, but it would mostly consist of the animals she was hanging around at the time, and also she wouldn't give you the history anyway.
Oh, such a wonderful character.
I mean, if you want an alternative theory, maybe there was a Snickers shortage during this period. You should know it yourself when you're hungry, you know?
Yeah. All right, I'll accept the werewolves. Tanis, any thoughts on Empty Children before we move on and cross that bridge?
Oh,
for crying out loud, Shane.
Go ahead, Tanis.
I was just saying that the werewolves make sense to me. I wish there was something else because I don't know. I don't associate them as empty children, but sure.
Yeah, and it's a metaphor. And it's also just worth noting before I move on that two of the pages from this mystery are found in Sentistan itself. The first east of Nerissa's house, and the second near the blood bank. One of which was from the puzzle box research that we just talked about. So just keep that in mind if you're progressing this one. All right, in terms of crossing that bridge, this is the scaffolding just north of Jimmy. And with this one, in order to complete this mystery, you need to find Inquisitor's Memoirs, page 5. And I want to talk about this one first because the citizen remains are necessary for both Night Theater and Secrets of the Inquisition. So I just want to talk about how to get to the citizen's remains. With this, the field study says north of the plaza lies crumbling ruins of a magnificent bridge. With some work, we could make it more accessible. The report comes back saying with some carefully placed scaffolding, we can now access the magnificent view of the bridge over the Sentistan waterways. And this was the bridge that they used in the trailer for City of Sentistan, and lo and behold, we can actually go near it now. Mm-hmm. We can't cross the bridge, but we can go somewhat near it. So this was a fun moment for me.
Yeah, it was nice to unlock a new, very small area, but a new area all the same. It feels like that ongoing progression where you unlock new bits of an archaeology dig site. And they can even do this in an established area. So that's really nice.
And what it says about the Sentistan environment, the way it's built, is that everything we see, if there's effectively pathways and whatnot, at some point we could be walking down there and it would all be able to be used at some point. I don't know if they intend to use the entire Sentistan environment they've built, but it's definitely something that they could do. And it just really shows how massive this place is and offers up some nice free cam views.
Yes.
I love this. All right, Night Theater, and this was, I think, where Maud Raven really came into his own in writing these mysteries. This one unlocks with 67 archaeology pages are excavated from Cathedral debris, Inquisitor's remains, Marketplace debris, and citizen remains. Now, what this mystery effectively is a number of reviews on plays that would have been carried out at the Colosseum. And there's just some really absurd things inside these reviews, and we're gonna work towards the end, and you'll see just how certain forces, let's just say, exerted their influence upon the people of Sentistan by we get to the end of it. So the first quote I want to bring up from the mysteries is that there was a play called A Midwinter Night's Tomfoolery. The play, they say, as performed ever by the guild actors of Sentistan, rather lives up to the group's acronym, which is to rather say, a lot of hot gas. So the reviewer is putting down the people who write this thing, but at the same time, it's just saying that the play is full of hot gas.
I mean, an acronym like that, it was just asking for that joke to be made.
Yeah. And at the end of it, after I just want to read the last couple sentences of this one. It says, after 2.5 hours of being subjected to this blatant attack on the art of theater, the crowd had thinned to naught, but a whisper and my will to live had barely survived the attack. It is therefore with great delight that I award A Midwinter's Night's Tomfoolery a 1-star rating, and would recommend no one ever be subjected to the performance again.
The joy of really scathing reviews.
And, the first one was lighthearted. Article 1 was lighthearted, I'll say. But if we go all the way up next to Article 3 in a critic's review, we learn that Gas, the guild actors of Sentistan, is no more. Because the Praetorians themselves sought out these actors and did them in. And we'll learn more about the Praetorians in our next mystery.
Apparently there were seditious messages in their work. Clearly they weren't very good at embedding these seditious messages since no one saw them, but gotta trust the Praetorians, right?
Yeah. And that's another thing that goes back to that old question of empires, is that they're worried about those seditious messages being embedded because they're concerned that something to that effect could bring down the empire. And we're starting to see the cracks in that if you need to be worried about that, you can kind of start to kind of get to the question, is your empire really that strong?
It also means you got this as an excuse to get rid of anyone you so wish.
Yeah, anybody that doesn't do as you please. And, well, we all know that Sliske was involved in the with the Praetorians. So the next play in Part 4 was directed by the Prefectus Praetorio, who we otherwise know as Sliske. And in this play that was called Whispering King, Sliske put on a play where the actors wore masks that were designed to look human, and by the end of the play, the actors all wound up killing each other. Yeah. But yet
pleasant.
This play still got a 2-star review.
Well, it's better than one of the ones above, eh?
Yeah, and I guess if Sliske needed to direct the play, he did what he wanted to do, and hopefully the reviewer would give a good review, and we'll talk about what happened with that next. I just want to quote from Article 4 here before we move on at the end of it. Then it ends in a gory display of death and dismemberment. The actors turned their blades upon each other and in swift movements impaled one another with their weapons. Their deaths were the only believable pieces of acting in the entire play. All in all, a tremendous disappointment, one that I would strongly recommend avoiding.
I gotta say, it's worth talking about what Sliske is writing about here. Glacial plains and secret doors buried deep beneath the ice, wandering philosophers who would walk the world in silence, contemplating what it means to be truly forgotten. It makes jokes about being hollowed out and fed to ancient jaws that would grind us to dust and make us glad for it. Does any of this sound familiar?
He's talking about the Majra ritual, isn't he?
Yes. That's not... Maybe.
What were you thinking?
I was thinking along the lines of the Kindred Spirit lore books, where you've got Death at Sea, which is about Sliske doing some research into writing a play and finding the trail of breadcrumbs that leads to Zautak in the process.
Huh. Okay. So now I see why the Clank West Spoilers channel was talking about Zautak.
Yeah, grind us to dust and make us glad for it. That feels very much like the little refrains we've had of Zautak before.
Yeah, Sirion Tanis, before we jump into what truly happens at the end of Critics Review, would you guys like to write, or I guess I should ask, would you rather be writing the review, or would you rather be one of these unfortunate actors?
Yeah. Probably going to go with reviewing.
and this just shows what the people of Sentistan were up against, and I don't know, part of me would like to be involved with that kind of culture. How about you, Sirion?
I'm good, thank you.
All right.
I like plays where nobody dies in the end. I think that's not dying is good.
Wow, that's a hot take.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
I think Shane's just looking for a way to get to the feast and orgies or something.
Hey, no. But I mean, if you're involved in this, then you better be willing to take a 1-star review. But if you dare criticize Sliske himself, you'll have to do an amendment to your review, as was Article 5 of a critic's review, an amendment to the review on Whispering King, because the reviewer says he felt he was too harsh. And he calls it now a veritable work of art. Because he sees the true story now. Because to see the true story and the true artistry behind the play that he gave a 2 out of 5, you need to read between the lines. And the actors don't matter at the end of it, because they're just mere mouths for the authors. Or for the author. And at the end of it, the reviewer says, I imagine myself now, within that play, walking those frozen fields and standing before those impossible gates. I dream of those last moments as the play concludes, and I dream of seeing what they see, of learning what they learn, of becoming. My mask arrives tomorrow. 5 stars.
He's got a new acting career lined up ahead of him, though a very short one.
Mm-hmm.
This guy took the Sliske Kool-Aid because he knows what happens if he doesn't.
Mm-hmm. It seems almost insincere, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Like writing it at knife point.
Yeah, of course. Of course. And I don't want to offend anybody by this, but I seem to remember a story from World War II, where Hitler commissioned some sort of art or something, and it didn't go exactly the way he wanted it to, and the artists involved in that met the same fate as this reviewer.
Oof.
So there's that huge empire, we're the best kind of thing, but on the inside, it's not all sunshine and roses coming through again.
People with too much power and very picky feelings about things.
Exactly. And there's just this one line in here that really stands out. The reviewer says, they lived as nobodies, but now their lives conclude in theatrical perfection.
That's all they're worth to the Empire, just a spectacle at the end of the play, hey?
Yep. And I think at this point the mask on the Zerosian Empire has come off entirely with this. And this leads us nicely into Secrets of the Inquisition, unless there's anything else on a critic's review. I think we covered most of that there. So
Feels like slaves.
Yeah, that's a very,
really good
very good way of describing it. So,
Mm-hmm.
All right.
You could see it like in Rome being, that class.
Exactly.
The non-citizens.
Do as you must, or do as we tell you, or else you're going to meet a very unfortunate end.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so before we move on and discuss what everybody has been waiting for since Caradet, and maybe even before that, if you've kind of looked into what happens after we're done with all the main core archaeology mysteries. Of course, that's Secrets of the Inquisition, but before that, I just wanted to take a moment and thank our Patreon supporters for this episode, because without you guys, we wouldn't be here doing what we do, and, you know, Lore Diggers is definitely one of my favorite episode types to do, and we wouldn't be able to do this without all you guys. So this week, I'd like to thank, in particular, Amos Reed, Andrew C., Arvids L., Brock H., Christian S., Chunk the Monk, Cook Me Plocks, Diana, Drama Free, Duramax, Free Milk, Jade Gizmo, Jason S., Jesse W., Kesky, Lucky Ducky, Nate the Great, Name, Renhawk, Ricky A., Samuel FL, Scott DS, Soupfinder, Stub Eve, The Bears OP, The Naked Captain, The Lion, Tom V, and Zant. Thank you, all of you, for your support. It truly does mean the world to us. And if you're wondering what this is all about, you can check us out at patreon.com/RSBANDB. For as little as $1 a month, you gain access to the entire back catalog of monthly bits. These are our special monthly bonus shows that focus on anything and everything relating to RuneScape. Some of the things we talk about there are why EOC saved RuneScape, what we can expect following from RuneScape Mobile, how good did RuneScape Mobile do, what does old school look like. We've done so many of these monthly bits, and our most recent one, of course, is how to do clue scrolls effectively. So if this sounds interesting, you get access to a back catalog of more than 30 monthly bits for as little as $1 a month. We also do have a VIP tier for $3 a month, where you'll get a special VIP rank on our Discord server mentioned on the podcast at the start of the month, and access to high-quality stereo versions of the podcast, in addition to everything else. And if you want to give the ultimate gift, we have our Insider tier for $5 a month, where you'll get a special shout-out each and every week on the podcast and gain exclusive access to the outtakes that we use to make the clip show at the end of the year. And, of course, in addition to that, we also have the RSBANDB Update Roundtable that we run monthly, where we have a discussion with the folks in our Discord and Patreon supporters, members like yourself, about anything and everything RuneScape related. So if this sounds like it's interesting to you, or if you just want to support the podcast, check us out at patreon.com/RSBNB. And should Tanis and I ever hit the mystical $500 a month tier, well, then we'll subject our taste buds to a wide range of spice in the Hot Ones challenge. So if you want to see us suffer in pain, check us out at patreon.com/RSBNB. Thanks so much, everyone. All right, Secrets of the Inquisition, a 9-page mystery. I think this is the longest mystery that we have in all of archaeology.
It's a big one.
Yeah, technically the Gargoyles is more pages than this, but those pages are all about 2 sentences long. So.
Yeah. Wow. This one is found practically everywhere. Ministry remains, Cathedral debris, Inquisitor remains, while completing the mystery, and, of course, Citizen remains. And we need to, of course, go back, because the first time we heard about the Inquisition was when we were wrapping up with the Caradet Lore Diggers, and we talked about the Writing on the Walls mystery that talked about the Inquisition. Also, Questcaping, when you were on the show at the end of Azanadra's quest, we kind of were wondering if that faction of the Temple Knights was related to the Inquisition, and I think at this point it's safe to say that answer's a no.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Well, not necessarily.
Okay.
The Temple Knights come from a very different era.
Yeah. Well, let's save that as we get through this, because we learn with this that the Inquisition is indeed the secret police force of the Zerosian Empire. In the book, it says their duty is to walk the Empire in secret, to uncover and remove heretics and blasphemers, with a focus on protecting the faith. The police were so secret in this that they didn't even know about one another, and sometimes that led to accidents, let's say, between one another, and that, well, you might actually kill one of your own Inquisition friends by accident. And
I think it's not that the other Inquisitors didn't know about each other, it's that the Praetorians and the Inquisitors didn't really know about each other.
Okay,
the conflict between those two.
All right. I took it more of the fact that Inquisition was so secret that you didn't know who an Inquisitioner was.
I was thinking that at first, but Colton and Aurelius, as are the main characters here, they seem to know each other if I know enough.
Yeah, all right. And the view that the Inquisition takes is that sometimes the only solution is to excise the diseased flesh, amputating the corruption to save the whole. And that's what the Inquisition did for the Zerosian Empire. Now, the Praetorians, on the other hand, their interests were elsewhere, and you get this from page 6 in the mystery. The Praetorians were the master of secrets, and only a handful of them were known. They're well hidden and guarded, even in the Shadow Realm. All but one, of course, Sliske, who made his debut of hoisting that over everyone. And he was seen as different from the other Praetorians in that he could not keep secrets, and ultimately, as they say, his masks were more brilliant than the Inquisition was led to believe, and we know what happened with that with Sliske's game in the assassination of Guthix and ultimately trying to hand off the Stone of Jazz to one of the gods in the first part of our Sixth Age story here. So there's the dividing line on Inquisition versus Praetorian for anybody who was wondering on that. And feel free to comment anywhere along the way, anyone here, because I'm just going to read a couple more points. We also know that Zaros disappeared again in the Second Age, and his departure was initially considered a rumor, but with that, it was considered a great betrayal to think that he was gone. And if you thought anything like that, that would be considered blasphemy and reason for the Inquisition to come and get you. And the Inquisition was so concerned about this that they actually wanted to find the source of this rumor and listened very intently to the crowds at the Colosseum Games. But the question that was even perhaps more powerful, or the question that many people had, was that perhaps maybe there was an even more powerful entity that might have killed Zaros, since it was a long time since he was seen. And obviously, we know that didn't happen looking back from the Sixth Age, but these people in the Second Age had no idea, and they were wondering if it, in their own words, could it have been a terrible, wicked blasphemer by the name of Guthix? And that's not how we're used to hearing him be talked about, is it?
It's all the points of view, hey?
Yeah. And
strange healing god.
It really shows that there can be one way of looking at things within the Empire, but on the other hand, if you are anything related close to Guthix, well, you're a terrible blasphemer.
The Zerosians definitely have a very all-or-nothing view of, at least very much the Inquisitors. That's definitely their job, after all.
Yeah.
That's their job to make sure faith is absolute, or else you get excised.
Yeah. And with that, I don't know. I feel like we're in a situation here where the mask of what it was like to be a citizen in this empire has finally come off, because if you don't have that devoted faith and you somehow manage to show that you don't have that devoted faith, well, you're not really going to be one of those top-tier citizens anymore.
Glorious empire, but on certain very strict conditions.
Yeah. And I guess at this point I'd ask, would you guys choose to live here?
No, I would not.
I'd rather live in the wilderness.
Yeah. I'll go and live with the druids. They seem pretty chill.
Yeah, go be a blasphemer.
Yeah.
Again,
with all the herbs, you know. I think we have a pretty good time all the time.
Yeah.
So I'm the only one here that would consider putting up a facade to live in a great empire then. Interesting.
Well,
so,
I mean, kind of do it now, but sure. Comparisons could be drawn.
But, like, is this the Inquisition that... So this is the same Inquisition as the writings on the wall?
Yeah.
So it was all Zaros all along?
Well, not
Always.
so much.
Not directly.
Yeah. it continues to drift away from that part. I'll probably have more to say on that towards the end of the mystery.
Yeah.
Because to me, I find that whole, that moment where it says your character's name in a writing on the wall was
right. I forgot about that.
Pretty mind-blowing to me. That was chilling, right?
Mm-hmm. Well, these guys were supposed to have the power, able to travel through time as well. So,
yeah, it was chilling, and I really thought that we had something where doesn't matter what god faction you're behind, this is bigger than that, right? And then it turns out
it's the Zerosian secret
guys
police
that Zaros just let loose on the world. I'm like, okay,
not quite. No, that's what I was going to say later on.
All right, whet our appetite a bit with that right now,
yeah.
Questscape.
Yeah.
All right, cliffhanger. Okay.
Whoa.
No, give us a bit of a hint.
Okay, well, they might have started off in the Zerosian Empire, but that's not where they remained. And it's not Zaros' actions they were working on. That's what I'll say.
All right, and we'll learn more about that as we progress then. All right. Now, in this, we also learn that the statues across the city were the eyes of the Inquisition. All the statues that you see in Sentistan served as that purpose, and those will come up again in the future as well.
Yeah, that suddenly makes them a whole lot more sinister.
Yeah, it does.
So,
it really does.
Was I the only one who was thinking of China at this point?
I was thinking Edward Snowden.
There's a lot of places with a lot of security cameras.
Both of those did not come to my mind, which is very weird that you both mentioned something to that effect of Edward Snowden or China.
It feels like this is a very, over the course of the mysteries we've discussed, this has turned from a very utopian world with a great empire to something more akin to, from the 1984 or the British Empire from V for Vendetta, strong government control.
Oh my God, we're heading there right now in real life.
I mean, that too. I'm not sure if this is set up as a social criticism.
I don't think it would be, knowing Raven.
But it's starting to go that way, and it's getting more and more sinister.
Yeah.
As we go along, and I'm like, okay. I mean, I'm not surprised. I think
it's
what
Zaros
this shows,
for heaven's sakes, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I think, people who know they can't be trusted themselves are more likely to distrust others. So, I think it all fits perfectly in sort of the Zaros and the Zaros Street, where it's all, there's just no straight answers and honesty.
Another thing that comes into mind is the Dominion from Deep Space Nine.
Yeah, exactly. Mm-hmm. I think there's a lot of parallels to empires that are not quite as great and awesome as they look on the surface.
Yeah,
you've got all your little Wayuns trotting about. But
if you behave, it might be good. We use the statues though, because to find page 5 of the Inquisitor's mystery, you need to activate the 4 statues, and to do this, you use one of each of the elemental funerary urns. And after you activate them, we have to go back to the Inquisition office. And it turns out that to actually get this page, you need to use that the drawers from City of Sentistan and type out the 4 names listed in page 4 of the mystery: Tobed, Warvim, Zadok, and Yokai. And after you're done with that, the eagle-eyed have noted that the drawers will wind up in a happy face configuration.
Very Sliskayan. I think they really just wanted an excuse to use the draw puzzle again, because that was excellent. A lovely little creative thing.
Yeah. I'm wondering.
I did check, by the way. If you put in the correct pattern, but you aren't at that point in the mystery yet, it doesn't work.
Okay.
Oh,
Somebody wanted to test it. I think it was Kebab Thief wanted to test that, and it doesn't work.
And what I'm wondering is that when the city of Sentistan drawers were built, I wonder if they built those drawers in such a way that for this mystery it would wind up being a happy face.
well, I remember they were talking about on the City of Sentistan stream how there were a couple of characters they wanted to include in the original draw puzzle, and then you had just had a bunch of letters left over in order to get it into an eye shape, and 2 characters' names just sort of came out of needing letters for that.
Okay.
So yeah, I imagine they might have started with a shape and come up with names from there.
All right, that makes sense because you can come up with citizens' names fairly easily.
Mm-hmm.
But in page 5, it's then implied that the statues in the cathedral can actually speak to members of the Inquisition, and that maybe, just maybe, their pathway into the Shadow Realm, which is where this mystery really starts to pick up steam. Because, boy, where else have we heard about the Shadow Realm recently? Oh, it's the place
Everywhere.
where Raksha came from. It's where Guildmaster Tony supposedly disappeared to, and it's where Zaros meandered off to.
Is that the Shadow Realm? I was under the impression that the Shadow Realm was the thing we entered when we were the Ring of Visibility.
Well, the impression I'm getting is that it's all sort of different levels of it. We can go to a very, very thin surface layer of the Shadow Realm, but there's so much deeper. The sort of level where you get to Shadow Leviathan and stuff, and, well, presumably Erebus.
That's interesting thinking about it, because we've also heard Erebus be the Majorat afterlife. So
Zerosian afterlife.
a
Yeah.
Zerosian afterlife, and with that, when one of them dies, they are pushed to the deepest depths of the Shadow Realm in that case, if that is indeed the way it's meant to be. So, fascinating. Now, of course, you're probably wondering what the hell these statues are going to say, and Aurelius discussed the whispering of the statues with Colton, and then they actually moved into the Shadow Realm and overlooked the bridge. And you can imagine that this probably isn't one of the deepest levels of the Shadow Realm, because there is a way to go deeper later in the mysteries. But interesting part about this section was that they say the whispering voices warned of absent gods, vague prophecies of the Praetorians' crimes, and dark and sinister experiments beneath the city. Something that could even threaten Zaros himself.
I want to say something here.
All right.
They're hearing whispers on the bridge, and we've actually got a link back to Orthan Digsite here. It's in Cranon's final law book, where he talks about having heard the rumors, the shadow, and it specifically uses that same phrasing here. The shadow speaks. So people are hearing about things, and they're hearing them from this mysterious unknown source that they're calling the shadow. And it sounds like this was the case both in the end of the Dragonkin civilization, where Cranon ended up getting led to Zartak, and it's being heard here, where they end up being led to, well, very, very deep into the Shadow Realm.
And there's your Zartak link by tying 1 to 2, then to 3 in this case again.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's starting to kind of paint a picture for me. And Aurelius and Colton actually want to do their job as Inquisitioners and try and stop these experiments, because they see it as a threat to the Empire and the Zerosian faith. And it's gone to a point with this where they've even started to follow Sliske around. Like, they observe him from the Shadow Realm, but of course we all know that Sliske can enter the Shadow Realm, so it's a question of how deep do they go to ensure that they're not spotted by him. But they observe what Sliske does. They see his demeanor swap from jovial trickster, as they say, as we saw in a number of quests. And then they can also see it go to the other complete end of being a ruthless sadist, as they called it. And I don't know that it's necessarily at this point would have been the safest idea to be messing around and observing Sliske like that.
Yeah, they're sort of following him right into a trap from the sounds of it.
Yeah. And they saw him enter the Shadow Realm from within the cathedral, where he was sitting in his pew. And there was a note, or rather a single word that was etched into the pew. And all it said was Voss, V-O-S, one word.
Now, this isn't the first time that Voss, the name Voss, has turned up in RuneScape. There have been a couple of tiny little hints before.
The ambassador fight, right?
Really? That's not what I was going to say at all.
Okay. I might be wrong on that. I thought it was something to do with that. Where are you going on this?
So, number one is in the empty throne room, as we mentioned earlier. There is a massive mural on the back behind Zaros's throne, and it says something in Latin. It is written in the stars, and in the center you see the stars form the word Jas, but to each side you see in the darker depths of the mural where there's people withering to skeletons, you see the letter V on one side and OS on the other, also written in stars.
We're doing a bit. What a cheerful empire, the Zarosian Empire.
In the middle, you've got Jas and beautiful portraits of people reaching up to the light, and lovely little horrible.
This was always
dying.
This was always in the empty throne room.
Yes, that's been there since 2016, and the other hint has also been there since 2016. It's a very unlikely source. People are talking about a very specific bit of Rune Metrics promo art, where you've got this ogre character or whatever it is standing in front of a blackboard with all sorts of scribblings going on, pseudo-scientific scribblings of equations and whatnot. And at one point it's got the initials of all the elder gods, so like J, F, B, W, whatever, all the elder gods, and then above it it's got the Morse code for Voss.
And it's clear at this point we're not talking about the voice of Sarah, and I think we should just make that clear.
Yes, I imagine not. But yeah, it's so that was also 2016.
Sarah was in it all along.
Oh man, I knew it. He had a dark side. But yeah, so this has been around since 2016. The Rune Metrics art actually came out the same year. And it is only now that we're actually hearing anything of the name in-game very directly like this. And it's interesting because in a lot of pieces of Zaltak-related content, they actually seem to avoid saying his name.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I don't think in, like, the Elite Dungeon 3 lore books, for instance, they don't actually mention Zaltak at all.
So where is this mural in the empty throne room? I'm by the Anamika rocks right now.
Yeah, so it is basically right there. So just look up behind the Anamika rocks, look up behind the throne, and you've got a massive wall, the back wall of the empty throne room, and that's where all that is.
Oh, it's hard to make out, honestly.
Yeah, probably better to 3-cam.
Okay. That's very interesting. I had no idea that we were going that way. Weird. But
it's so Voss sounds very Elder God like in terms of
it
name,
does.
Right? It fits in that naming pattern.
And it fits this, and it fits the same format of 2 consonants and a vowel in the middle.
Yeah. But like
the vowel sandwich.
All the vowel sandwich.
The older vowel sandwiches.
Oh, lovely. Well, I was wondering, like, we have gotten a bunch of history things about Elder Gods, right? And we know it's 5 of them.
Yeah.
So it's not just like another Elder God.
Well, here's where we get the link to Orphan again, because what Cranon is saying in that journal is he's saying there are equals of the gods, the Elder Gods, perhaps even betters, and that he's going to seek them out.
Right, I remember that now.
So it's a different entity outside of the Elder Gods.
Yeah. Although
Because,
there's another possibility. I think Zaros has previously said that there are 5 Elder Gods of form and 1 of something else.
Exactly. Yeah, I forget where that came from, but you're entirely right on that. We're going to need to talk more about him, Voss, in just a minute. So I'm going to continue on with the mystery. So as Aurelius and Colton go deeper into the Shadow Realm, they don't see Sliske or any Praetorians. The statues that they activated now, they said, had a vitality to them, and the mystery pages tell us, the player, of what to say. So the first mask speaks. Astra Inclinate said non-obligant, and the player then responds, Vincent, sorry, my Latin is nowhere to be found.
Think it, quisa, think it.
All right, you read
There we
the second
go.
one then, Sirion.
Sic semper tyrannis, to which the player respond, Odervin dum metuant.
Which is
My classical education has use!
Yay!
which I googled
So
these,
proud of
and
you,
these are,
Sirion.
fairly common things that can be pulled together when you translate them. The first one is the stars incline us; they do not bind us, and the response to that one is that he who prevails over himself or herself is twice victorious. Which, when you think about it and you put it in that context, I don't know that means anything to us here for this right now. So
I think Astra Inclinant, that is...
to the stars or something to that effect.
And in the mural you've got, it is written in the stars.
Okay.
There's a little connection, maybe.
Sic semper tyrannis is thus always to tyrants.
You know who that's attributed to, Shane?
Who's that?
John Wilkes Booth.
Okay, fair enough.
That's what they say he said as he did what he did.
And then the last one is let them hate so long as they fear.
Hate is gonna hate.
Yeah, which is all within the realm of everything that the Inquisition and Praetorians feel, so to speak. And, well, when we make our way deeper into the Shadow Realm, we find Aurelius. And we also find the monolith closed up, sealed tight, well, relatively, surrounded by a swirling vortex. And the text says that it's emanating a whispering voice that dazzled. It has the ability to promise everything that Aurelius wanted and anyone to that effect. The evidence also needed to convict. Sliske would be promised the chance for Aurelius to get his family back, and all he would have to do would give into temptation and touch it. But Aurelius did not give into that temptation because he said he was an inquisitor and could not. But when asked towards the monolith, he said, "What are you?" And it simply replied, "Voss." And this is the same monolith that's sitting in the Archaeology Guild right now, otherwise known as the Codex.
Yeah, maybe it wasn't the best idea to build a guild around that thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, it already wasn't. It's being attacked by all kinds of nasty stuff.
Archaeology is not a particularly safe profession these days, huh?
No. And, I just also have to say that there's some wonderful environment art down there in the way that they did this with the closed monolith in the cathedral, deep in the Shadow Realm.
it's all existing environments and assets, but it's really breathtaking to just go down there and see that. It's so ominous.
I honestly wish I recorded it. I only have a screenshot of it because you can't go back in after you complete the list. Oh, how do you do that?
You actually just have to dig up the Urn of Miasma or whatever, restore it, use it on the statue, same way you came in. You're able to get back in.
Oh, so
I tried it out earlier in the recording on my mobile.
Okay, so an Urn of Miasma is what you're saying then?
Yes.
All right. I will have to do that. You know what I'm doing now. But anyways, I'm going to keep driving the show so that we don't get off track with that, even though I really, really want to go there. So Aurelius is down there, and he could have done more with this, but Zaros reappears and intervenes. And he makes the declaration that the monolith is closed tight. And here's the important part, I think, but the difference between closed and open was imperceptible. Whatever.
I'm not sure what to make of that, personally.
My interpretation of that is that what Aurelius and us define as closed is all relatively speaking, because it tells me that you can never permanently close it or seal it shut.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I took from it.
So I'm looking at the exact phrasing now. So it's saying, with a snap the monolith closed tight, it had barely opened. The difference between closed and open was imperceptible, but now that compulsive feeling was gone, and only the rage of a god bore down on me. I'm thinking it might not be that big of a thing. Now I look at it in this way. It might just be a Zarosian influence. You can barely notice it was open, and now it's closed. It barely looks different, but it feels the compulsive feeling is gone.
All right, I could get behind that, I think. But continuing from that, this was a trespassing because it was a very sacred space that was supposed to belong only to Zaros. And with this, Zaros began to limit the power of the Inquisition. No more statues. They couldn't use them within the city. Their duties were restricted. The Praetorians filled in the gap. And Colton was sacrificed for the Majorat ritual. Well, Aurelius was stripped of his Inquisition title.
I love that this was all turned out to be more Sliskus plotting.
And perhaps the big thing to take away from this is that we're not done with Sasuke.
Mm-hmm. Well, we sure have voices going on in our head on a regular basis, don't we?
It's never good when you hear voices in your head. And speaking of voices, Aurelius says he keeps hearing the whispering voice, and it urges him to find it now that there's no god to stop him from doing so. And that's where this mystery ends off. Kind of a cliffhanger with that, do we think?
Mm-hmm. Well, you sort of see where Aurelius ends up. He's still trying to follow that voice.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not the first dig site that leaves us with open questions. I think most dig sites left us with more questions than what we came in with.
Something of another recurring pattern I've been noticing is that a lot of these dig sites end up with you finding one of their central characters alive, despite this being ancient history.
Like Trindine and Caradet.
Yeah. And here we have Aurelius still wandering through the Shadow Realm.
So there's two big questions coming out of this, right?
All right.
That's the Inquisition, of course.
Yeah.
What happened to them, and who or what is Voss?
So I think we can answer the Inquisition one first, easier. And with that, I think my theory on this and the way I feel right now is that the Inquisition kind of faded into the background, but probably never disappeared. And if I had to venture a guess, it would be after this happened here, is probably when they did writing on the walls.
Yeah, because this is very much Second Age, the height of the Empire.
Yeah.
Whereas everything in the original first archaeology update, where the writing on the walls comes from, that's Third Age, and decidedly well after.
Right, because the books and lore on that are talking about the impending war. I remember going back to the Everlight ones in particular on that. So that makes perfect sense with that.
This is where I want to assuage Syrian's fears of this all just being Zaros all along.
Okay, let's do that.
So what it says is that Zaros, from this moment on, is restraining the Inquisition. He's denying them what they had before, he's limiting their power, and the seed of doubt in Zaros has been planted in the Inquisition. So I imagine that this is where they start to part ways. So while they have started out as this way of Zaros to exert control over this empire, he has effectively lost control of them here, because not only are they all beginning to doubt, but, well, Zaros himself is turned against them and is actively trying to limit them. And a powerful organization
What's
like
he
that...
scared of?
Yeah, they're not going to react well to being actively limited.
Right.
There's going to be pushback. People are going to do what they want, and Aurelius, for one, he wants to go follow this song, and who knows what the others want.
He wants to do what he was supposed to do as an Inquisitioner.
Mm-hmm.
Which is?
To try and keep the faith up, and he sees Sliske at this
Zaros?
point. No, keep the Zarosian faith up, but he sees Sliske as being counter to that, because remember he said if he gave in to the monolith, he'd have all the information he'd need to convict Sliske.
But why keep Zaros' faith up if Zaros is actively fighting the Inquisition? Isn't the whole point that the Inquisition is sort of seceding, or what is it, like separating from the Zarosian?
Mm-hmm.
Like, my response to the gods saying, yeah, you can all go home now, you messed up, wouldn't be
Right.
to be, oh, I'm just gonna keep doing what I was doing.
I see it as a way of practicing kind of a pure version of the faith, in his view, in Aurelius' view.
What is the pure version of the faith? What is the faith in the first place?
Well, we don't.
Aurelius seems to be following an entirely different faith now. He believes in nothing but what the voices are telling him.
And I think those voices are indeed linked to Zaros, probably before this corruption of the empire probably happened. And I think that's where he wants to go back to, or guide the empire back to that direction, so to speak, with that.
Sort of schism then, between who wants what.
I remember Thaxi had a question on this. Did the spades come into this at all?
No, they're just sort of interactive for some reason, but they don't do anything.
Okay. All right. I just had to ask that question.
So do we know where the Inquisition is at nowadays?
Well, it really depends on whether our old boy Valenius, our former Temple Knight.
The big globby thing from the Temple Knights.
Yes, him, that one. The one with the fish. But he seemed to be working pretty closely with Trindine, who is, of course, a Praetorian. So maybe not, actually.
So you think there's a close link between the Praetorians and Inquisition nowadays?
Well, who knows?
That sounds unlikely given the
Yeah,
story.
like,
right?
it doesn't
The
sound...
Inquisition sort of lost power at the benefit of the Praetorians.
And Trindine was trapped in the Shadow Realm for so long, and Valenius was just chugging along as a Temple Knight, and Sliske was off doing his own thing. And this entire mystery is all about the wedge being forced between the Praetorians and the Inquisitors. It specifically says that, where is it? Yeah, so the Praetorians picked up the slack, and as the Inquisitors, diminished, their flame grew brighter. But it's also...
So I guess the question we need to ask is, are the Inquisitioners still around in the Sixth Age in some form?
I mean, there must be.
There's a little thing I'm noticing now, actually. Because the Inquisitor HQ, that is, in fact, where you find Sliske's Inquisition profiles in City of Sentistan. So maybe he's effectively taken up the mantle by the time of that.
Interesting. I mean, I think it could go that way.
Sort of as absorbing the Inquisitors as a final coup de grace or whatever.
Yeah. And then perhaps what we have with writing on the walls was just some leftovers with that.
Who knows?
On that end. All right. What was the other question that we wanted to talk about? Voss? What do we want to talk about with
who
him?
or what?
Or is there anything?
Voss?
I guess I should ask fairly. Is there anything else on the Inquisitors before we turn it over to Voss for the next 20 minutes or so? Because I think that's the big oof out of this mystery. No? All right. Let's turn it over to Voss then. The Zautak connections people are making, of course. I don't know that that's necessarily something that is going to happen. I think that's a red herring that the players have been pushing heavily, and I don't think it's going the Zautak direction. I think our best bet on what Voss is something of Elder God proportion. That's something else, like you mentioned with Zaros. Perhaps could it be something from a previous revision?
For all we know, Voss and Zautak could be similar but separate entities, like how we have Elder Gods that are separate entities, the separate shadow pantheon of Elder Gods.
Interesting.
I mean, Zautak almost sounds like the combination of two of them.
Mm-hmm.
Given it's a combined name. Tak is Elder God.
And Zao.
And Xiao, not quite maybe, but pretty close.
I saw someone theorizing.
It's half a sandwich.
It's a sandwich with an extra bunch piled on top.
It's yeah, exactly. It's a BLT or something like that.
That sounds good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I saw someone theorizing that the strange hyphenated Zao could be some kind of descriptor for all we know.
Yeah, it could be.
Yeah. That's a bit of a shot in the dark, though, because I'm not sure there is really much of a conclusion we can draw at this point.
No. I think our best...
It's
Go ahead.
Yeah, it's interesting because, in a way, the Elder Gods, they're currently set up as the antagonists of the game, right?
Yeah.
But, in a way, they just are, I feel, as well. It's... like if you go to your fantasy tropes, there's like the fight between order and chaos, good and evil, and all that stuff. And the Elder Gods don't really fit that bill. So having like a shadow pantheon that's like the opposite, I don't know if it makes sense, right? Like what would they be like?
We've got creation and we've got destruction, I guess.
But the Elder Gods do both, right?
Mhm.
True.
They create it and then they destroy it to make the next revision. So
But
it's
they're
not
all
like
about.
there's two different forces.
But still, they're continuing the universe in some way or another. Perhaps if there's a shadow version, then their aim is just to stop it entirely. Stop the cycle.
And we also need to remember with that shadow anima is poisonous to the Elder Gods. So with that, would something, if we're going down this whole Voss, Zautak, shadowy business, would it make sense that we could consider Voss as a fifth Elder God?
Anti-Elder God.
Yeah.
Anti-Elder God's probably the best way of looking at it. But
considering the source of shadow anima, it comes out of the monolith, doesn't it?
Yeah.
That's where Raksha popped in and popped out as a big old shadow dino. And yeah, you've got the Elder Gods that are creatures of anima, and we've got the shadow anima Elder Gods as counterpart, I might presume.
So stringing that all together, and I don't know enough about the lore of the ambassador fight with that. If you were to take that whole Zautak thing and split that apart, that's 3 of them accounted for, and we really only have 3 active ones currently here: Jazz Full and Wen and Bick. Well, Jazz doesn't have an egg, but 3 of them have eggs here, And there's your 3 counterparts.
Oh, I think now that you mentioned the eggs, I'm thinking there's possibly some symbolism in the way that the monolith is seen on the dais. Because, of course, in our dimension, in our version of the world, the non-shadow world, we see the Elder God eggs bobbing about above that dais there in the center of the cathedral.
Yeah.
But you go into the deep shadow realm,
Yeah.
and you see the monolith there instead, the counterpart to the Elder God eggs.
It's also worth noting that the way you see the monolith in the shadow realm is how it was sent to me in the archaeology opening package of that.
You got your own
close.
foreshadowing.
So, and in that same general format. So, I don't know. Is there anything else on this, or are we just firing into the dark at this point? Because I feel like I wasn't prepared to come talk about the ambassador with that, but I feel like we need to have a refresh of everything the ambassador says on this in order to truly understand this Zautak business. Because you remember, when you do the ambassador fight, there's those shadow hands and claws that come up from the ground.
I think let me just bring up some of Cranon's lore, one of his lore books.
All right.
It reminds me of what was being said on that bridge, that waterway, where people were hearing essentially what they wanted to hear. What Cranon's been saying is that it was always there, begging for us to discover it. I can't believe how easy it was to put it all together. If you take the old stories, the old parables, you can see the bigger picture, the real story. It's all there, hidden in the stories that are not told. It's him imagining that there is a way to solve the problem of the Dragon King curse in a way that does not involve the immense violence and cruelty that is involved in the Dactyl approach. He's imagining that there's a way to do it in a way that is pure and bloodless, and that's what he's being led to believe by all this, the same things that are leading him to Zautak. And it reminds me of Aurelius looking over the waterway and hearing the shadow saying that all the answers are there with Voss, with the monolith. If you just go deep enough, he'll find Sliske's conviction, all of that, everything he needs.
Right, and of course that said going deep enough would be uncovering the monolith and giving into it in order to find everything, all your answers around it, but we know he didn't do that.
Mm-hmm.
And with that, maybe that's the ultimate conclusion to the Elder Gods arc, is that the player has to do that in such a way that doesn't upset Zaros, because, you know, if we were to do that as World Guardian, would Zaros let us engage with the monolith in that way? Because presumably our World Guardian powers would keep us safe in doing that.
We are more shadow anima than your average human being, hey?
Yeah. Because remember, the discussion when Ratchet came out is that that chamber would kill anyone else, but we were fine.
We can waltz right in.
Huh. Once again,
Well,
more answers.
one does not simply walk into Erebus, hey?
Yeah, and I'd say at this point, one does simply not walk into Sentistan expecting all your questions to be answered.
Thanks, Voss.
I'm content to move on to the stained glass windows unless Tanis and Sirion have anything else on this, because at this point, I think we're done. I don't think the Lore Diggers have ever been stumped in this way, not able to pull something together on this.
Well, the Inquisitor's mystery was pretty stumped.
Yeah, but we've solved that now with the help of Sentistan.
Yeah, well, and I'm pretty sure we'll solve this as well at some point.
Yeah. All right. Questscaping, you wanted to add a chapter to the discussion here about the stained glass windows. I didn't even think of that when I was putting these notes together, but please do tell us about these windows in the four corners of the cathedral that we put together again when we excavate.
Yeah, so you've got this ongoing thing that you can contribute to as separate from the rest of the dig site. The stained glass windows in the cathedral, there's one for each of the ancient elements. You repair them with 100 ancient glass shards each, and you obtain these shards while excavating, the same way that in Caradet you get the pylon batteries, and in Orthan you get the Rex fragments. It's about roughly fast pace, I think.
Yeah.
Like, I think after about an hour of excavation, I had enough to repair one window. Was about the pace you can repair these.
Yeah, and by the time you're done with all the mysteries, you should have been able to repair all the windows, I found.
Yeah, so it's a nice thing to have on the go as you go. So each of them comes with, well, they're gorgeous for one thing. It's really sad that initially they were glitched.
I haven't gone back to look at them but yeah, they were, they looked very transparent.
Very see-through, yes. Which I guess makes them good windows, but not the best stained glass windows, hey? Symbolism, being able to see right through a thing.
No birds flying up and smacking themselves into that window.
Yes, you got to dig up all the ancient bird poop all over the Sentistan pews.
Poor aviancies. Anyways, continue.
Yeah, and so once it was patched so that we can actually see these windows, you can see the gorgeous symbolism of 4 of the ancient elements and figures linked to them. So for the blood window, the examined text is depicting the nobility of blood, a reference to the vampire race and their place in Sentistan. Now, of course, the connection there is very, very obvious. And we've known the vampires are prominent in Zerosian society forever, so no surprises there. The ice window, depicting the indomitability of ice. The window seems to depict a large glacier. Yeah.
That was our first big hint.
So yeah, now we happen to have our big old glacier front, a whole front full of glaciers in Sentistan. Are these perhaps not the first glaciers in Sentistan? Were they playing a role even back here?
That's interesting. I never thought that they could be doing that.
Well, I remember one of Nex AOD's lore books. Zaros actually goes and fetches the heart of an arch glacier or something as one of Nex's power-ups, basically.
Okay.
That's the one attuned to ice, of course. So Zaros was familiar with them, and I guess they could be used in some way. Lucien summoned them in Ritual of the Margaret, so...
Another thing I'd just like to point out about the stained glass windows these times is that they're not like the Prif stained glass windows where they're a texture. They're actual glass to the point where you can actually see through them, and they have a translucency around them, and that's the new material stuff that they've been doing in the last year or so. And if you go really close into them, you don't get that same sort of pixelation that you have in Prif. So this is a step up, definitely, in terms of environment that they're now able to do.
It's gorgeous. They actually refract light and whatnot.
Yeah.
It's quite something.
You can actually see some of the flames going outside if you look through them.
Mm-hmm.
So really, really well done. And, this is attention to detail. Obviously, it's not going to make or break the entirety of the mysteries surrounding Sentistan, and it's not going to spell out what exactly is going on with the Spades or Voss or anything to that effect, but it ties in those 4 ancient elements in a way that, like we said at the start of this, it's kind of in effect the cherry on top in terms of just how lore is being weaved into this, I guess we could say.
Mm-hmm. It's all there in the environment, hey?
Yeah. And, that's the perfect thing with archaeology, and if I didn't have the affinity to farming, archaeology would at this point be my top number 1 skill.
Farming stolen your heart, but archaeology can steal another organ, maybe a liver or a kidney.
Did we talk about the shadow and smoke windows?
Not yet.
Okay.
So the shadow window depicting the power of shadow, a parable warning about the dangers of creatures from the shadow realm. So that's the sort of thing you kind of wish Zaros had taken heed of before opening up the monolith on us, hey?
Yeah, and I mean, we can see that in Raksha, just as an example. So,
yeah, a whole bunch of shadow cacklers spilling out on us. Thanks, guys. And finally, the smoke window depicts the relentlessness of smoke, seems to represent some sort of smoke demon. And I don't know, have there been smoke demons before, or?
I don't think so.
Yeah, not that I'm aware of. That might be new.
So the question I have is, we already have the glaciers, of course, but will the vampires, shadow creatures, and smoke demons arrive at some point in the Elder God Wars? I mean, I guess we've seen the shadow creatures already at the monolith with the shadow cacklers. So I guess that just leaves the smoke and blood creatures to arrive at some point with this.
Well, nothing really seems to map onto the node on front, does it?
No.
Yeah. So if we're going 4 for 4, then they've already kind of missed out on that.
Yeah, so it's
maybe
likely.
It could be foreshadowing.
Like I don't think it's likely to happen because I think we're still definitely going to see something Tsar related with the full front when that arrives. The only one I'm not sure of what it'll be is with Bic. So
yeah,
but
big old could be anything. Wild card.
Maybe it'll just be a big ballpoint pen
or a lighter.
or a lighter.
That one ad. Hey.
Yeah. Well, I think with that we can call this an episode of the Lore Diggers for Sentistan. Of course, if anybody has any comments on what Voss might be, or if you want us at some point to do the speculation monthly bit about where this is all going to end, I think he'd have to play a pretty big role in that now, given where we're at. So watch out for the next monthly bit poll. But let's do some picks of the week. Sirion, let's go first with you.
All right, so I picked a it's a book, but it really comes together in a whole package, and it is Foundation. It's a book by Isaac Asimov, and Foundation is really a really good way of describing it, because it is very much the foundation of science fiction. So this came out before Star Wars was a thing, before, all the concept of a galactic empire was a thing. So this is 1951 that this came out. So that's it's pretty unique, and it sort of sets. It introduces all these new concepts to science fiction. I mean, we're all pretty familiar with Asimov's laws of robotics, probably.
And those get cited daily, or not daily, but regularly in modern tech.
Yeah, exactly. So this is really, like I said, this was there before Star Wars. This was there before all that stuff. Like, I think that there's a lot of stuff that Asimov introduced and came up with. So for that reason, it's the foundation of science fiction. But I think also the books themselves are just still really good. Like, they hold up really well. So the idea is that this is millennia in the future. There's one big galactic empire, but it is dying, and so there is this branch of mathematics called psychohistory that can be used to predict the future. And Foundation it's not really like a single story. It's sort of a collection of stories throughout the period of time, sort of explaining how those predictions, how they work, how they came true or not. That's up for you to figure out. But there's some really interesting and cool stuff in there. This is just one of the books in there. It gets followed by a few more sequels. If you are interested in a full reading order, I can dig that up as well. There is a recommended order to read them in.
And don't we also now have an Apple TV exclusive TV series on this as well?
Yeah, so I don't know when this episode goes live, but towards the end of September, Apple TV is launching a series on this as well, an adaptation. This is one of those series that hasn't been adopted for TV because this has been dubbed the book that cannot be adopted by TV. It's not a format that works really well, so I'm very curious to see how they're going to do it. But yeah, I recommend it. Like, there's more staples, right? Like, Dune is another staple of science fiction, and there's a few other ones. Foundation is the one that I find the most digestible as well, right? It's not really you have to really get into. You can just pick it up and pretty much read through it pretty easily. So I do recommend it. It's a fun book. Even if you just read this one, I think you get a lot. But I'm pretty sure that once you read this one, you want to read more. So.
Alrighty, sounds good. And we have a link to that in the show notes at update.rsbnb.com. Questscaping, I believe you have a pick of the week as well.
Yes, I do. So my pick of the week is a game. I've linked the Steam version. I'm not sure which platforms it's available as, but I play it as a mobile game. And shock horror, it is a mobile game that's actually really, really good. It's an adaptation of a board game originally, which in itself is basically originated as one guy's attempt to recreate the Civilization series as a board game. It's very open about its roots and what it's inspired by. And yeah, I've got really into it. It's all very strategy focused, very based on optimization, trying to work with the cards and stuff you've got to optimize production, optimize food generation, to try and build your culture and your army and beat the other nations you're playing against. So yeah, it's very much the Civilization kind of game, but in a board game format and adapted really well. It also happens to have a really hilarious tutorial. So if you're worried about it perhaps being daunting, as games like this often can be, then the tutorial is genuinely fantastic and also hilarious and guides you through it all so perfectly. And that's honestly kind of a godsend for this kind of game. So yeah, I've been playing far too much of this lately and enjoying it rather a lot.
All right, that sounds good. And, I think the Sid Meier's Civilization series is one of the games that has paved the way for so many from other companies like Paradox and whatnot. And
absolutely,
the fact you can take this game to the basics of a board game with physical cards and whatnot, if you wanted to get it that way, but you can also get it online, of course, speaks volumes to how it was initially designed as well. And for those who prefer this format, it might be a better way of doing Civ than with Civ, because I don't know about the rest of you, but if you play Civilization multiplayer over time, when your game gets really big and really far along in the timeline, it can take time to move between turns. So this might be a good alternative in that. There
have been legendary Civ games that have lasted for literally 10 years of real life time, like The Endless War, hey. But yeah, games of Through the Ages are far shorter, like half an hour maximum, perhaps. But it's all still that same strategic
and that's a good format.
mindset.
And that's a good format for that as well, for those who don't want to sit there in that regard. So. All right, sounds good. I believe that's it for this episode of RSBANDB Update, though. So thank you to everybody for joining us. If you want to subscribe to the podcast, you can get us on Apple Podcasts, Google, Spotify, and more. Just visit update.rsbnb.com/subscribe. We're also on YouTube at youtube.com/rsbnb. Give us a like and subscribe there. It helps the channel out. So with that being said, we'll be back next week for another episode of RSBANDB Update. Take care, everyone.
Bye. Yeah.